Willy and Jerry, welcome to the conference, and it's just a real pleasure to see you, to meet you, Jerry, and to see you again, Willy, as we've spoken before.
Pleasure, thank you.
Now, one of the things that's unusual about you both, for many people who have a sort of misconception about what Alzheimer's or dementia looks like, is that you're both very young. How difficult is it for people to understand? Let's start with you, Jerry. What it's like to experience having it, but also just sort of being so young. You're in your 50s, aren't you?
Yep. I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's when I was 55. The diagnosis took 2 years, so there was problems actually starting when I was 53. And I reckon it can start 5 or 6 years before then, so I was obviously having problems in my late 40s, which I knew nothing about. Like, I didn't feel nothing, I didn't understand anything, to be honest. Diagnosis in your early 50s is incredibly hard, to be honest. I was working full time. My wife worked full time. My children were quite young. And through that diagnosis, I actually had to retire from work. I lost my driving license, which had a profound effect on family life. People didn't understand that you could have Alzheimer's at the age of 50, 60. People think it's an old person's disease. And to be honest, that's what I thought as well. Prior to being diagnosed myself, I just thought Alzheimer's or dementia was really something that you grew into as you got older. I hadn't realised that it was an actual brain disease. And it came as quite a shock. It had a profound effect on our whole family dynamics. Like,
and for yourself, you're trying to hold it together for the family, but inside you must have been feeling terrified, really, in one way.
Oh, it was awful at the time. Hindsight is a great thing, but at the time, I just felt the world had turned its back on me. As I say, I had to retire from my job, so I lost 32 years worth of work colleagues and friends through that. I had to surrender my driving license. I wasn't given the opportunity or the choice, and I lost all the freedoms associated with that, and had to learn to use the buses, and public transport isn't that great, to be honest. So I actually spent the first 5 weeks after diagnosis sitting in my living room looking at the four walls, thinking that my life had ended. And I did actually get to a stage where I thought, this is not good. If this is what life is going to be like for the next few years, I'd rather it ended. And I really did think about committing suicide for a while.
That's such a dark place to be in. But what pulled you through? What got you to being where you are now?
I was very lucky, actually. Where I live in Fife, they had actually just started up a dementia awareness program, the local council, and they had a woman called Ruth McCabe who was going around doing dementia awareness presentations. And I heard that Ruth was doing one in a local village just a couple of miles down the road. And I thought, I said that might introduce my kids to dementia, give them a wee insight as to what's going on, what causes and all that sort of stuff. So my wife Tricia and I took the kids along to see Ruth doing a demonstration, and it was really informative. And from there, Ruth and I struck up a friendship. And she asked me if I would tell my story to people rather than her just trying to explain what dementia is all about. So I said yes. And from then on, Ruth and I have been all over Fife. We've given dementia presentations to over 300 businesses around Fife, to over 2,500 dementia friends. I tell my story, and it actually gave me a reason to get out of bed in the morning again. Gave me that feeling of self-worth and built up my confidence again, and it was amazing.
Now you two have become friends. Willy, how did you meet? Because you were in a sort of a similar situation. You were diagnosed, was it last year? You're in your 60s, aren't you? And you were...
Yeah, I'm in my late 60s, so I'm older than Jerry. But but it's still kind of comparatively young to be diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. And that was a problem for me when I became diagnosed, in that I was receiving psychiatric care because I'd originally presented with depression, which I think I did have. It's just the depression never seemed to get better despite all the medication. And I started to think there was something organically wrong. But the psychiatrist whose care I was under refused to believe it and said, well, you're just too young. And anyway, we've given you a psychological test and you score very highly. And I did. I scored sort of 97 out of 100 on the these tests that you can get. It didn't stop me believing that something was wrong, because I was convinced it was. And when I was discharged from care in England and moved up to Scotland, the psychiatrist here said, well, your symptoms are intriguing. We think at the very least we should send you for a brain scan. And the brain scan and subsequent scans and tests showed that yes, I had the starting of Alzheimer's disease, which is a very scary thing to be told you have. I mean, I was told it kind of sympathetically and all the rest of it, but at the same time, it was kind of, here you are, bye-bye. You know, not a lot of counselling or follow through or booklets to read or anything like that. And I confess that the saving grace for me was meeting Jerry and Ruth and other people in Scotland who are involved with kind of peer support. And I remember very vividly the first time I went along to the meeting of the stand group in Fife, and the sheer relief of meeting people my own age or similar with the same condition. And I had lost my driving license, which I found very difficult to cope with, going from having driven for years and years and years to being told I wasn't allowed to drive. And I remember sitting with Jerry actually and having a conversation about driving, and it was like there were lots of things we didn't have to say, because we'd been through the same experiences. And I think that power of talking with other people with the same condition is remarkable, actually. You know, I mean, we can be a bit flippant about it and say, well, all you do is sit around and drink tea and eat cake. But the real power is those conversations that you have. And, you know, when you hear people sort of swapping stories about, oh, did you know you could get this benefit? Or you know, have you thought about doing that to make your house warmer or whatever? Along with the personal support, which means that you feel you can ring anybody up at any time, and, you know, there's somebody else you can talk to about the dreadful incontinence or whatever.
As you say, it's incredibly powerful for both of you. And I know, certainly with you, Willy, from when we've spoken before, and from what I've read about some of the things that you've been doing, you're absolutely passionate about making sure that people realise that when you have dementia or Alzheimer's, it's not just memory loss, is it? Because for you, it manifests itself in a different way, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's not memory loss, actually. I don't have a problem with my memory. I have problems with a particular sort of memory. So my short-term working memory is a bit dodgy. So that's things like, I mean, I've just had internet installed in a flat, and that means you have to put in the code, and that entails you using your working memory. You have to sort of, you know, remember small a, capital M. I can't do stuff like that anymore. But my memory of what happened last week, or who is the Prime Minister, actually? Is it the same as last week? That's not a problem for me. But I have difficulties in my eyesight because my particular form of Alzheimer's affects my parietal lobes, which are the top of your head. And they are where your eyesight processing system is. So I have the peculiar experience of seeing things which aren't there. I see black spots and lines and things which don't exist they don't exist in my eyesight system. They exist in my brain, and trying to explain that to people is quite hard. But yeah, I'm passionate about saying to people, look, whatever you think you know about Alzheimer's disease, whatever you think you know about dementia, some of it might be right, but an awful lot of it might be wrong.
Yep.
I'm going to talk to oh, yes, no, please do say. Yeah.
I was just going to say as well, yeah, I'm quite similar to Willie, actually. My eyesight is affected by my Alzheimer's as well, which is part of the reason why I couldn't, had to stop driving, because I couldn't get it between the lines in the parking bay. And it got to the stage where I tried to get out of the car, and the wife had to park the car for me, because I just couldn't get it in between the lines. It was unbelievable. I also see things in 3D kind of thing, like holograms. So if it's like a bold pattern, like flowery wallpaper or flowery carpets, that actually jumps out at me as if it's actually real. Yeah, so it's not just my memory. I do have quite a bad memory as well. I mean, I struggle to remember what I've had for breakfast and all that sort of stuff. So that's how poor my short-term memory is. My long-term memory at the moment, thankfully, is really good, but my short-term memory is very poor. Like,
I want to talk to you both about some of the things that you do that, you know, apart from all the engagement with other people. I mean, the creative side. I mean, for you, Jerry, you've been into a recording studio, done poetry and music. Tell us a little bit about that. How did that happen?
oh, what an amazing time, actually. I'm a basically I help form a group called Stand, which is a peer support group for people living with early stage dementia and their wives, husbands, and family. And through that group, we meet up every week and do different activities. We don't entertain, we empower the people with dementia to use their minds and brains and we kind of physically work them really hard. Come like 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, you are tired because you've really, really been working your brain, and it's fantastic. So we had this musician coming in called Gus, and what we wanted to do, we wanted to do songs, but we didn't want to just listen to Gus playing the guitar and singing the songs. We wanted to write songs. So what Gus started doing was he would start bringing in maybe like a picture or an item, or we'd talk about things, give us ideas of what to write songs about. And as a group, we sat down and we would start writing songs, putting in all the lyrics in. Lyrics came from everybody involved in the group, and then Gus would put it to a tune. And at present, we have 8 original songs that we've written. The idea is to write an album, which we're hoping to record early next year. And the songs are amazing. What's great about it is the fact that there's people in the group who have never really owned their diagnosis as such, but I've got so much out of the involvement with the music and the group. Audrey, for instance, like she's written a song, well, she wrote a poem, and we've turned that into a song, and that's a number 1 hit, by the way. That's going to be number 1 hit for us.
No doubt, no doubt.
Brilliant. Like.
No.
And even the people further down the stage who can't contribute verbally, you can see them actually enjoying themselves, listening to what's going on, and just being involved in all the interaction that's going on. I also had one of my poems turned into a song, which was recorded in recording studios. Yeah, it's amazing, absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it is absolutely amazing, and I really applaud you, because it just shows, you know, what can be achieved, doesn't it, as well? I mean, you were an architectural
technician. Yep.
Technician. Did you ever think you'd be in a recording studio?
Absolutely not. I mean, when I was working full
you might
time,
have built it, but
that's what I did. Yeah, I just worked. The idea was just to earn money, earn a crust. But since being diagnosed, I've been doing so many different things I would never have dreamed of. Poetry, for instance. Never ever in my life have I attempted poetry until I heard one of the ladies in the group had written poems, and I heard her poetry and I thought it was amazing. And that inspired me to think, well, I can do a bit of that, like, so I did. And the poetry's led on to the songwriting as well. And it's also led on to other, I mean, the group's been fantastic. We do things like this, like the conferences, talking to people. It's just opened up so many doors. It's been amazing. Like, hindsight's a great thing. If I'd known that being diagnosed with dementia it sounds really sick, but it's not. If I'd known being diagnosed with dementia was going to be as good as what it has been, I wouldn't have worried at the time, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a death sentence, but if I'd known then what I know now, I wouldn't have been so worried, like, to be honest.
And I know that will ring true with you, Willy, as well. And you've used your creativity because you were an ex-journalist, but you worked on a radio station, didn't you?
Yeah, I was a journalist, and I've kind of taken a bit of a conscious decision to say, okay, so that means I can interview people and talk to people, and you know, maybe I can do something with those skills. So I've made a series of videos, for instance, with people, including Jerry, that's up on YouTube, but just people talking about their experiences of being diagnosed and what it means and what's happened to them and all the rest of it. My own particular area of creativity is I do a lot of painting and drawing, and that's something I lost the ability and interest in completely. It just went, which I found very hard and difficult to cope with and didn't understand why. And did a bit of reading and discovered that is linked to, drawing is linked to the parietal lobe. That's where we think the sort of drawing control center of the brain is. And I also knew that music was meant to be therapeutic, particularly the sort of music that you listened to when you were 16 and, you know, young and in love, or struggling low levels and pace or whatever. So I set up my own music therapy and sat for 2 weeks of listening to the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, which is the music that I grew up with, and my interest in drawing returned and hasn't left me since.
You're also doing a master's degree as well, aren't you?
I mean, this is well, it's Jerry's fault, really.
Go on, Jerry.
I have become so interested in.
I was too lazy to do it.
You know, if you sit in the sessions, as Jerry said, with Gus doing music, and you experience the extraordinary amount of creativity that happens in that space, and the way that music and poetry and arts can help people come out of themselves, then there is something extraordinary going on, I think. So I've decided to return to university. And to give you a clue, last time I was in university, we were marching against Maggie Thatcher Milk Snatcher. So it's a steep learning curve. But I've decided to return to university to research into this area. I've been lucky enough to be given a scholarship to do it. And you know, it's hard work. One of the things that is hard and that I'm still struggling with is I think you don't always realize when you have a brain disease that things which you once did without thinking about now are more tiring. So, you know, sitting through I can do a lecture a day. I couldn't do 2 lectures in a day, because you're just having to work that much harder.
Yep.
That gives you exhaustion as well, doesn't it? You know, mental power gives you real.
Yeah, and I've been living with friends for a couple of years, and I've recently moved into my own space and kind of coming to terms again with shopping and cooking and all the rest of it. You know, you don't think of that as a mental effort because it's just everyday life, but actually it is. Mm-hmm. Kind of, what am I going to have for tea? You know, what time do I need to put things on to cook? These are all mental processes that we use without considering. But when you have Alzheimer's or dementia of some kind, it's like, you know, if your body's run down and you have to walk a mile, you're having to work harder. Well, our brains are having to work harder. And that's not always easy to understand, I think, and still catches me out.
Yep.
Well, listen, both of you, you know, it is absolutely delightful talking to you both. And I think it's really opened my eyes, and I'm sure people watching you and listening to you will be really, really heartened by what can be achieved. I think it was you, Willy, that said it's a terminal disease, but it doesn't have to be a death sentence. And both of you really are living the best lives you can, aren't you?
Try to.
Definitely, absolutely, yeah, definitely.
Thank
And
you
what we
so
try
much.
and do is encourage people to live the same, really, because it isn't a death sentence. It's just life a different way.
Thank you both so much. Really
Pleasure.
appreciate the time.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.